is a beautiful thing. It grows to the quiver of a fife that sings. I can take it with the wave of my hand and place it upon my music stand. Such a beautiful thing. Such a beautiful thing.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Special shout out now, and thank you for all of those who are watching this as a recorded video. We post all of my talks on 3 different platforms. We post them on YouTube and BitChute and Rumble. So please subscribe to whatever platform that you are watching these on. And please leave a comment after you watch the video. I love to have those comments, and hit that like button too. The more likes these videos get, the more they get shared. That's the way the process works. And of course, I would love it for everybody who will benefit from this video to be able to watch it. So please make it possible for more people to get exposed to it and to watch it. The history of mankind is generally a slow evolution towards peace and freedom. This is sometimes very hard to see, and actually frequently people reject that and say that that is not so. People talk about how violent things are and the wars that are in the world and things of that nature. However, if one actually objectively looks at these statistics, the statistics of the violence that any individual person may be exposed to in his lifetime is lower than it has ever been in human history. We are actually, regardless of how it may appear and regardless of what you may hear, living through the most peaceful and nonviolent time in the planet. So if you have any doubt about that, I really encourage you to expose yourself to this book, which is The Better Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined by Steven Pinker. I talked about that when I first was being exposed to it a couple of years ago. It's an awesome book. It's also quite large. It's about 700 pages long and exhaustively researched, and then it's got another 100 pages of references. So I'm not twisting your arm to read a 700-page book, but if you're curious, search for it on Wikipedia. Wikipedia has actually a pretty decent summary of this book, and you can probably get the gist of it in 5 minutes instead of having to wade through 700 pages, though he writes a fascinating book. And I will confess that I did not read the book, but I listened to it as an audiobook, and I listened to it completely 2 times. I think it's like almost 40 hours of audio because it's very large, but it was actually very fascinating. And I am convinced, Steven Pinker has convinced me that we are living in the most peaceful and nonviolent age that our planet has ever had. Now, as I said, people will argue about this, and some people think that the world is actually regressing. But however, the statistics don't back that up. They just don't. And even if you were to think, that sometimes things are regressing, remember that in A Course in Miracles, Jesus tells us that retrogression is always temporary. Quote, "Be assured of this, each will progress. Retrogression is temporary. The overall direction is one of progress toward the truth." So we're always progressing, and we need to see that. That's the title of my talk today, Choosing to See the Progress. We need to see that. We need to choose it. And if we do not see that progress, that just means that's what we're choosing not to see. So it's always a matter of choice. The question never is, why is there no progress in our social evolution? The question is always, why am I not choosing to see the progress that must be there? So it's just a given. The progress is there. If you're not choosing to see it, that's the problem. You're not choosing to see it. You have to choose the perception of progress. It is there for you to choose. Choose it. Course in Miracles says, quote, perception selects and makes the world you see. It literally picks it out as the mind directs. For what you look for, you are far more likely to discover than what you would prefer to overlook. A very important idea. What we look for, we're far more likely to see than what we prefer to overlook. And some people just have a habit, maybe we all do at times, to just overlook the progress and just focus on the negative, focus on what's not going right. But there's a lot going right all the time. In his book, Mr. Pinker talks about, why there is this perception that that things aren't going well when indeed they are going very well. And what he says, I mean, he points to many reasons, but one of them is a contrived media bias, that we listen to news media, and there's this contrived bias of the news media to focus in on the negative. Obviously, tragedy and crisis plays better, sells better. But ultimately, it's fake news, because the real news is that it's the most nonviolent and peaceful history, epic of the human species. And this is something we actually should be celebrating. But again, the fake news doesn't like to talk about that. So, I'll just ask you a question. How many of you heard about the great progress that was made in peace this past week, actually 8 days ago now, 9 days ago, between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda? Okay, the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda have had war violence going on for over 3 years. And it's been bloody and terrible, and it's actually rooted in the violence that the country of Rwanda had several decades ago. So we got decades long history of violence and death in Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. But on June 27th, there was a peace treaty signed in Washington, D.C., and it was signed in Washington, D.C., because it was brokered by the current administration. Marco Rubio and President Trump and others brokered this peace agreement. Yet it got very, very little press. You would have had to have really been hooked up to alternative media to have heard anything about it. I got a picture here just in case. So let me see. Yeah. There's our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and that's the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda representatives shaking hands and looking pretty happy that they have been able to broker this peace agreement. One thing, I look at that picture and I think about it. I see Colin Powell sitting there on the porch behind him. But Marco Rubio is the child of two immigrants who came from Cuba. So he's a second generation. His parents, the immigrants, would be the first generation. He's a second generation child of immigrants, elevated now to the level of Secretary of State and, brokering peace agreements between nations. I mean, it's a pretty remarkable American success story. And you don't hear that talked about very much either. But those are the things that I see, and those are the things that we could be seeing, and I think those are the things that we should be seeing. Those are the things that we need to choose to see. We need to choose to see the progress. And our regular corporate media does not focus on that much. And if the only news and media you are getting is from regular mainstream media, you're not actually getting news. You're getting propaganda. You're getting propaganda from the government. You're getting propaganda from the drug companies because they're the ones who fund the media. So I say this frequently, but I really encourage people to really explore alternative media that's not brought to you by the government and big pharma. Um, the ego just wants to keep us separate and divided. And we, of Course in Miracles students, should be able to see through these deceptions. But we have to decide, and it's an active decision, and we have to decide that we want to see the progress. And we want to see the progress that's being made towards freedom and peace. And we want to see it more than we want to see the retrogression to captivity and war. So what's your choice going to be? I mean, because your choice is literally projecting the world that appears in front of you. Choose progress. Be optimistic. This was in the reading that Reverend Paula read. It's a good quote about progress. It says, "The progress of the teacher of God may be slow or rapid, depending on whether he recognizes the atonement's inclusiveness or for a time excludes some problem areas from it." So don't exclude any problem areas. Uh, you know, some people get upset because I talk about the government, but the government is a problem area. We're not supposed to be excluding any problem areas from our application of A Course in Miracles. Um, Actually, that quote was from the text, chapter 22. That isn't one of the ones that Reverend Paula read. Excuse me, I misspoke. But we don't exclude any problem areas from our application of A Course in Miracles. And government and world things like wars and peace treaties, I mean, those are what's going on or what appears to be going on in the world. And, I want to include all of it. I embrace the world. There are wonderful things going on in the world all the time. This past week, we had the 4th of July. And I have always been a person who loved the 4th of July. Some people think this is something new for me. This isn't new for me. I always loved the 4th of July. And I've always felt, particularly patriotic. I feel patriotic. I love my country, the United States of America. And this year, a couple days ago during the 4th of July, I decided to send everybody a little 4th of July blessing or, message. So everybody that I text message to, I do a lot of text message to, I sent them a little video of me singing My Country 'Tis of Thee. So I thought I'd do that here. It's short. I started with sounding the pitch pipe. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside let freedom ring. And then I waved a flag and I said, happy 249th birthday, United States of America. Woohoo, happy 4th of July. And I sent that to, I think, 105 different individual people. And I was really actually pretty impressed that most people really enjoyed it and gave me really positive feedback. I only got 2 kind of negative feedbacks, I guess, being that patriotic and positive about the United States of America just didn't sit well with a couple of people. Some people think that this is some sort of right-wing conservative thing that I do. But I really don't relate to it that way at all. And I do want to remind people that Martin Luther King, in his I Have a Dream speech that he gave at the Lincoln Memorial in August of 1963, recited the first verse that I just sang of My Country 'Tis of Thee. I also want to remind people that the great vocal group from the 70s and 80s, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, on The Tonight Show, the very first show after the September 11th attacks in 2001, sang My Country 'Tis of Thee. I will also remind people that at Barack Obama's first inauguration in January of 2009, Aretha Franklin sang My Country 'Tis of Thee. And then 4 years later, when he was getting inaugurated for the second time in 2013, Kelly Clarkson sang My Country 'Tis of Thee. So it's interesting how we have selective perception about such things. This has been something that has been embraced by liberals and progressives and conservatives alike. And I was just celebrating a little my exuberance about the holiday and the peaceful things and the movements towards peace that I see manifesting, the progress towards peace that I see manifesting. I think I talked about this last week. I mean, the progress a peace that I see manifesting between Israel and Iran. That's a pretty amazing thing. The fact that some people are talking about peace in the Middle East as a reality for the first time in my adult life. So this is all really pretty interesting. That's what I am choosing to behold. That's what I am choosing to see. That's the progress that I want to have happen. And so what I choose to look upon, I am far more likely to see than what I would prefer to overlook. That's our task. That's our job. You know, we're not to be a spectator in the salvation of the world, in the healing of the world. We're here to be the cause of the salvation and the healing of the world. Actually, being a spectator, just observing the healing of the world, apparently is not an option. We're either actively saving the world or we are actively working against that healing, against that salvation. Or as A Course in Miracles tells us, if we're not actively saving and healing the world, then we're actually salvation's enemy. Quote, would you not rather look upon yourself as needed for the salvation of the world instead of as salvation's enemy? Yeah, apparently there's no third option. You're either here to save the world or you're the enemy of it. So that was a question, as I like to say. These questions are what we would call a rhetorical question, but sometimes it's really good to answer the rhetorical questions. Yes, I would rather be here to see myself as needed for salvation instead of as working against salvation and salvation's enemy. You know, this is an active choice. Seeing the progress in the world, seeing salvation in the world, seeing the progress towards less violence and peace, seeing the progress that that the children of immigrants are making, seeing that, affirming that. You know, that's an active choice that we need to be making every single moment. And we're always on the job. We're always on that job. There is no rest from that job. Course in Miracles says, let us not rest content until the world has joined our changed perception. Let us not be satisfied until forgiveness has been made complete. And let us not attempt to change our function. We must save the world. It's not an option. We must. That's a command. We must save the world. That removes any ambiguity that we may have about what our purpose is and why we are here. And Course in Miracles tells us real clearly, over and over again, what our purpose is and why we are here. And this following quote actually was in the reading that Reverend Paula read. It says, to turn hell into heaven is the function of God's teachers. For what they teach are lessons in which heaven is reflected. We are here to turn this appearance of a hellish world into an appearance of a heavenly world where heaven is reflected. And we do that by identifying the healing and identifying the progress that is in the world, but that we sometimes just choose to overlook. Stop overlooking it. Start affirming it. Start claiming it. A couple of days ago, I was harshly challenged, actually, by one of our members for just being too optimistic. My stand here, like I'm sharing right now, it was just too optimistic that I wasn't seeing this terrible situation that was going on in the world. How could I not see it? And, it's my job to be optimistic. But it is not just my job, it's all of our jobs to be optimistic, to see the good, to see the progress towards healing, towards salvation, to see violence and racism ending. It's our job to see that, to affirm that, to claim it. The Course says all he's talking about teachers of God, sees is certain outcome, at a time perhaps unknown as yet, but not in doubt. The time will be as right as is the answer. So even when things aren't going particularly well, like for me, the second year of the pandemic, when I was restricted from going into public places, that was a time that things didn't feel that good for me. But I held on to the certain outcome. The time would be as right as was the solution, and that it wasn't in doubt. So if you can't get past the negative appearances that you believe you see out there, you can at least hold on to the truth that the healing of those things is certain and the time will be perfect for you. And choose to see what healings you can. Choose to see what progress you can. That is our job. The outcome of the world is not in question. The question is when, not what. The outcome is healing and salvation. The question is when, and it's our job to make that when as soon as possible, which means we have to see the progress. We have to choose to see the progress. That has to be our choice. That is what healing miracles do. They collapse time. The Course says the miracle worker therefore accepts the time control factor gladly because he recognized that every collapse of time brings all men closer to the ultimate release from time in which the Father and the Son are one. So we're here to make that when as soon as possible. We're here to collapse time. Miracles actually end time and space. They end physical reality. They bring the end of physical reality closer. When you actually begin to recognize that, you begin to see how subversive, actually, A Course in Miracles is. We're here working to end physical reality. That's pretty subversive. That's why the ego world is working so strongly against us. The ego world is trying to hold on to physical reality, and we, miracle workers, are trying to end it. Don't tell anybody what we're actually about. They won't like it. They'll probably try to crucify us, and we don't really want that. So keep it amongst ourselves, what we're here doing. Stop being a spectator in the salvation and the healing of the world. Be a causative agent in the salvation and the healing of the world. Actively choose always to see the progress that is being made. It's your job. It's my job. It's happening in the world. I see it all the time. And I am not inappropriately optimistic. I am appropriately optimistic. Okay, that's my talk for today. Thank you very much.
A flower is a beautiful thing. It grows to the quiver of a fife that sings. I can take it with the wave of my hand and place it upon my music stand. Such a beautiful thing. Such a beautiful thing.